how teachers perceive this problem of language is going to be a crucial question for in-service programs, for the pre-service programs and so on, across the board. How teachers perceive it. Because no matter what the policy is, the teachers' understanding that language is ultimately a means of learning is crucial. Let's imagine a class 11 child who hasn't understood a concept that has been taught, let's say in physics or whatever subject, which has been taught in English because that's the medium of instruction. Now this child hasn't understood it and stands up, if the culture of the classroom permits, and says, "Ma'am, I couldn't make head or tail of it. Can you explain it?" Now the question here is, will the teacher feel free enough to explain the idea in Tibetan or in Hindi or whatever, or will the teacher feel constrained by the policy and act like an orthodox that, look, medium of instruction is English, and so no matter what this child is doing, I'll have to explain in English again. And she explains it. That's the question. Is the goal of language policy better understanding, or is the goal of the language policy to impose a bureaucratic constraint on what teachers can or cannot do? To what extent teachers understand that language is a medium of understanding? And so, yes, the priority is absolutely clear that a grade 12 child must be able to explain a concept in English, because we are preparing our children for a world in which English is a dominant language. Are we also giving to that child the capacity to translate in his own mind and then through his writing a concept that she has understood well because she has felt free enough to interact with teachers in her own language, and she has the capacity now to translate that concept into English in appropriate words that she has also picked up? This is really a question of flexibility in the system and common understanding. During these NCRT years, I used to literally insist, whenever I met principals of Kendriya Vidyalayas and Navodaya Vidyalayas and various other types of schools that we deal with, to say, fine, I'm glad that you are buying all of our English medium textbooks, but please don't mind, take a set in Hindi also, put it in the class. Every classroom should have a set of our textbooks in Hindi as well as in Urdu. We publish in these three languages. I said no harm will be done, because when a child doesn't quite understand what's being said in English, there's no harm if he picks up the Hindi edition or the Urdu edition and looks at it. In fact, personally, I started gifting to English medium children a textbook of the same subject in Hindi if they came to my office, which happened quite often. I say, take this book there's the physics book you're studying in a nice English medium school, but take this physics book in Hindi, see how someday you might need it. And quite a few of them sometimes used to write to me saying that, I enjoy seeing how this same concept has been explained in Hindi, and so on. The key question is this flexibility of the mind, that the goal is understanding. The goal is not to be able to regurgitate what I have not understood, but regurgitate it in English. There's a very nice anecdote or story which explains this idea in the biography of the American physicist Feynman, whose father was also a physicist. And Feynman has recalled in his autobiography how one day when he was very young, he was 5 years or 6 years of age, and he went for a morning walk with his father. And they noticed a bird which was very attractive and colorful. So this little boy asked his father, "Papa, what's the name of this bird?" And his father said, "Son, it doesn't matter what its name is, because it has different names. They call it by one name in Spanish, by another name in English, by another name in Portuguese. Observe how it flies. What happens to its wings when it flies? Observe its beak. Can you tell me what it looks like?" It doesn't matter what his name is. Our problem is that we spend years and years trying to help children memorize names of things in English, names of concepts, names of processes, and don't pay enough attention to this joy of observing, of telling the teacher what they have observed, no matter in what language they tell that. So long as they know that this is the phenomena they have to understand, and then they have to report the phenomena in English, which is fine. English is very important. There's no question about it. And so I think maybe there is a need to revisit this policy that we will not touch English from grade 1 to 4, and then we will shift to English. Now, it's a difficult policy to follow. I think it's important for children to realize that several languages, are there in this world, and two of which I'm learning. English can remain a second language. You can call it a kind of a side language from grade 1 to 4, but can start early as exposure to English, because there are so many ways to get exposed to English now, not just through textbooks. We can, of course, develop very good textbooks to accompany the growth of the Tibetan as a mother tongue in those years. You also have, I'm told, 10% or more children of Indian backgrounds in your schools. They will bring their own languages. And so the recommendation of the National Curriculum Framework that the environment of the class should be flexible, should be multilingual. A teacher should be capable of responding to children in the language which they best understand, without following this orthodoxy that I have to speak in the language which the government has asked me to speak, and no matter what I do. Because this is the phenomena we see in Indian schools all the way. The most tragic experience I had was in Bombay. There was a municipal school where the medium of instruction happened to be Hindi. Many of the children were from Marathi background, somewhere from various other backgrounds. City of Bombay is like that. And in that complex, the Bombay municipality had several schools. One in English medium, one Urdu medium, one Marathi medium, one Kannada medium, and so on. So this happened to be the Hindi medium school, which I was visiting. And this teacher, she was Marathi speaking, but had learned very good Hindi. So I asked her hypothetically, I said, look, if a child stands up and asks you a question in Marathi, what will you do in your class? She said, no, I'll respond in Hindi. I said, why? Because my commissioner has told me that I can only use Hindi in these classes. I said, but you are inheritor of a great language called Marathi. This child is also a Marathi speaking. Why not explain the concept to this child in Marathi? She's looked at me. Beside me standing was the commissioner himself. Now, since I was the director, I said, Commissioner साहब, इनको allow कर दीजिए, क्या हर्ज है? बोल लेंगी थोड़ा बहुत अपनी क्लास में. So he also wondered for a moment. He was an officer. He said, नहीं, director साहब कह रहे हैं तो बोल दीजिए. कोई बात नहीं, आप बोल सकती हैं. That feeling, teachers in our system get so restrained by orders, by instructions, and by policy statements. So if the policy is medium of instruction is English, that will happen. If medium of instruction is Tibetan, that will happen. And nobody will worry about medium of understanding, which is what our goal really is. So I think policy has to be explained to teachers in this larger, flexible way, that our goal is to reach the child, to make the child feel comfortable. And then wonderful things will happen. They will be users of, different languages. Certainly English is one of the easiest things to master in a world in which so much is happening in English. But the orthodoxy has to be kind of overcome. Thank you.
Because it's not that I know the solution, but I think we need to be attentive to what might happen. See, one thing is when we're